I used to be Richard Beymer. You're listening to Twin Peaks Unwrapped.
The sycamore trees in the dark trees that blow baby, in the dark trees that blow.
And welcome to Twin Peaks Unwrapped. I'm your host, Ben Durant, and beside me is...
Bryon Kazaska.
Hi, Bryon.
Hey, Ben, how's it going?
Great. What do we got going on today?
Well, we just got off the phone with the one and only...
Richard Beymer.
Yeah.
He plays Ben Horne in Twin Peaks, and he's so much more. I mean, it's such a fascinating guy. I really could listen to him talk for hours, and I think, yeah, there's just so much more I feel like I want to learn about this guy, because he just is really something else.
A fascinating career, fascinating person, and we get to dive into a lot of other facets other than Twin Peaks.
And I don't know if anybody else has noticed this, but I really feel like there's some similarities between him and Lynch. I really do.
You bring that up to him.
I do. I will. And you should listen to it. But I think you could make a case that he's got a similar style to Lynch.
Yeah, I do agree. I do agree. But with that, Ben, I think it's time for Richard Beymer.
So we're on the phone with Richard Beymer. We know him as Ben Horne from Twin Peaks, but he's so much more, and I'm so excited to talk to you, Richard.
I guess we're rolling now. Is that what that intro
Yes, yeah, we're rolling.
We're rolling.
Oh, you didn't roll the first part where I just said hello. Okay. I'm used to doing everything's behind the scenes.
Yes.
Which I find much more interesting than what ends up being in front of the camera. Twin Peaks is the exception.
What was one of the first things you documented, and with what kind of equipment? I knew that when you were a teenager you did photography, but I was just curious maybe what one of your first memories of documenting something would be.
The first film I made was in Mississippi in 1964.
So how old were you during that time?
About 24, something like that. In summer of 64, it was about voter registration, and it was called Freedom Summer, and that had to do with blacks registering to vote. There was something called the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and college students, they decided to organize a voter registration in Mississippi because the blacks couldn't vote. So to do that, a lot of college-age folks who were interested in social issues and so forth went down to Mississippi that summer.
The voter registration phase of the Mississippi Project consisted of a house-to-house canvass to try to encourage people to go to the courthouse and register to vote. When trying to encourage the people to register, the biggest problem you deal with is fear. Registration in Mississippi consists of filling out a long and extremely complicated form, in every way designed to eliminate the Negro.
Like, by whom are you employed? Well, see, when you put by whom are you employed, you fired by the time you get back home.
You know, heads rolled. And one of the things that happened there that made the summer very well known. Did you ever see a film called Mississippi Burning?
I've seen it, but it's probably been 20 years or so since I've seen it.
The moment those three kids disappeared, it was news. The moment the three civil rights workers disappeared, it was news.
Somebody told you to stand up, get out of here.
You'd kill Frank? Is that what you're saying?
I wouldn't give it no more thought than wringing a cat's neck.
These people crawled out of a sewer, Mr. Ward!
We do not accept Jews because they reject Christ. We do not accept Papists because they bow to a Roman dictator. We do not accept Turks, Orientals, nor Negroes.
We're not killers. That's the difference between them and us.
That's the difference between them and you. Did you smile when the bulldozer ran over the black kid's body?
We're here to protect Anglo-Saxon democracy and the American way.
What's wrong with these people?
1964, when America was at war with itself.
It had to do with that summer, and it was about all of us that were down there, and 3 boys were killed that summer. Well, they were found missing. Goodman, Cheney, in Schwerner. Two white guys from New York. One was a black guy from Mississippi. The FBI was looking for them all summer, couldn't find them. They suspected it was the local sheriff and his buddies. Turned out that it was.
Wow.
They found them near the end of the summer, buried under a dam. You know how to make a dam in the country. You just get a big bulldozer and you dig a big hole and you bottle up like a little valley or something, and then wait for the rain. Well, the part where the bulldozer was building up the dam part, they found them under there.
Oh my gosh! Did this happen before or after you decided to make a film about that summer?
I went there, and it was at the end of the summer that they were found.
Oh, wow.
So it was, we were done there, yeah. But I did not go to Mississippi to make a film. I went to Mississippi to be a part of voter registration. This was supposed to continue on in the winter. Other people were supposed to come down and do voter registration in the winter. So this was called the summer. Since we were the first group there, I got an idea that it might be interesting to make a little film, so the next wave of students and everyone that was coming down there would have some idea what they were getting into, because we did. I mean, particularly the white guys from the north. There were a lot of black guys who lived in Mississippi. They knew, watch out. And the whole thing was based on nonviolence, Gandhi's nonviolence.
Yeah.
You rolled up on a ball and laid on the ground, and if they were going to beat you or kick you or whatever, that's what you did.
And were you concerned about violence? I mean, I think it's wonderful that you went out there to help out this cause, but was there a part of you that knew there was violence out there and had some concern about it?
I knew there was violence. A few months before this summer, even, there were 4 young black girls that were killed in a church. They blew it up. So this was not a big secret.
Yeah.
I mean, this was everywhere in Mississippi and in the South. This was not like once in a while. I mean, this was a time when, the blacks couldn't eat at a restaurant. You couldn't get in the bus. You had to sit in the back. We're talking about major, I had been playing with photography. I had a little dark room and stuff like that as high school. And so I was always doing that. But I had never actually had a motion picture camera in my hand. When I got there, I thought it might be interesting. They said, yeah, go ahead. Now, I didn't stop doing what I was doing. I had a camera sent to me. And for those, look this up. It's interesting. It's called a Bolex.
Yeah.
16 millimeter camera.
Does it have a crank?
Yeah, you wind it up.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I may have tried one of those. Wow.
And if you went to film school in the 50s, 60s, 70s, this is what you would be making films with. 16 millimeter Bolex. That was just the thing that everyone used. Kind of like a tank. It was really... it was Swiss made, and it was really great. And the film would go frontwards, and you could make it go backwards. You could do frame by frame. You could do a lot of fun things with it. But the thing is, when you wound it up, you only got 30 seconds. That's as long a tape could be.
Wow.
So there was that. And then the roll of film that went in the camera was basically 3 minutes before you had to take the side off, put another roll in.
So you got that sent to you, and then you just started filming everything you saw? Or what was the angle that you took?
Well, it's the same thing I'm still doing. As I sit here working on the film I'm doing now. It was the same thing I did with David. I got a camera, I see things, I shoot. That was the end of the story. Basically, what I was doing there was I was doing my voter registration part, which was we all lived in the black communities.
The difference between Oxford, Ohio, and what happened here and in other freedom schools across the state is as different as reading about a philosophy and living it. We simply discussed what was going to happen there, but we didn't know whether we'd be well received. We didn't know whether the kids would be enthusiastic. We didn't know whether we'd be shot when we came into town, and we didn't know whether the kids would come to school with 90% regularity or 10%.
We have won some students that we walk 8 miles to that school. When the people come down, they come in pickup trucks, and the pickup trucks are as low as they can get, and they have to leave behind the ones that couldn't fit in.
The concept of a freedom school is to supplement the system of public education in 2 ways. First, by remedial academic instruction, and second, by the discussion of controversial social issues which are close to the experience of the students and which the public school teachers of Mississippi are afraid to bring up in their classrooms.
your film is really something. Both Bryon and I think saw some of it on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I just love these moments where the teachers are either holding the children or playing in the water with the children.
Yeah.
Or it's just beautiful to see them all together.
The whites and the blacks did not intermingle.
Wow.
And so this is the first time that black kids in particular had never been around white young people. And so that was a big learning experience for both of us.
Yeah.
And it was as much an experience for us down there as the northern white contingent that was down there than it was with the blacks were there. It was quite extraordinary. But there was a lot of things to be concerned about too, because at any moment life could get very ugly.
Yeah. And your film did win an award.
And it came to pass, from the dedication of a few, the success of an idea, the Mississippi Summer Project. There will be more programs, and they will grow until finally we shall overcome.
And I know that it was only a few years ago PBS did their own Freedom Summer documentary, and I know they used a lot of your footage for that.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's never been out there all by itself.
I love your some of your photography work that you've shared over the years with Twin Peaks people. Like the last episode of Twin Peaks, I think for about a week or so, you did photography on the set. Can you share with us how you got involved with?
Wow, you guys have been doing research, haven't you?
Oh yeah, we're good.
Trying.
Yeah.
We're trying.
Wow. It was the last episode. An episode took what? It took 8 days to make it, so we always had a weekend in there. And since it was a big cast and all, generally I had 2 to 3 days work on the show. So I had done my time or whatever, and there was a feeling that this might be the last show. And we never had any photographers on the set. I mean, some people came down from the production office, I guess, and took some pictures, but there were no professional photographers that came in like do on movie sets and really color it. I told David, I said, I like still photography, and no one's doing this. How about if I just sort of cover you, get your camera?
That's pretty cool.
And I love how you captured them. I mean, did you tell them how to react, or did they just pose? Or I mean, they just have this wonderful reactions that you get out of them.
Yeah.
It's just conversation. You know these people for the most part. I knew, some people better than others. And I think they felt free too. I mean, it was just, another actor taking some photographs. I don't think they thought, wow,
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about this 24 years. It was like a bunch of, I can't say selfies, but it was just loose, and I liked how they came out in terms of what you're talking about, the people, and kind of Grace Zabriskie. I love the shot of her and Ray, and there's so many. I really like them.
Iconic. They're iconic
really
right now.
Iconic, yeah. And I know at one point you actually did sell the prints. I mean, years ago. Would you ever think about selling Twin Peaks prints again, or maybe making a coffee book?
Well, let's see. As you probably know in all your research, a number of people have written books on David Lynch's Twin Peaks and back, all sorts of about 5 or 6. And they've all contacted me. You all know that some of the photographs are in those books.
You're really generous that people have contacted you about those pictures, and you've been generous to let them use them in their books. So, I mean, it is wonderful that they're out there.
Well, the originals, when they're really nicely printed and all, are very nice. And my friend Christine McKenna, David Lynch's biographer, with someone else, has started a magazine. And one of the first editions is going to be about David Lynch. What a surprise.
Yeah.
But the piece is not about, the magazine is not about David Lynch. I mean, he's in the first one, but that's it. And they're using a number of my photographs for that. They're much larger than they've been seen before.
Wow.
But as far as the other is, when I make up the whole, I think I have about 56 or something like that shots. There's a chance that they'll be showing at a gallery in L.A.
That would be wonderful.
That won't be for some time, but they'll be large. They'll be like maybe 22 by 17 inches.
That's cool.
The best you'll ever be able to see them. I mean, that's something. So I just got your book, Imposter or Whatever Happened to Richard Beymer. I'm enjoying it. I just couldn't read it quick enough before we talked. Unauthorized biography.
Do you have it right there?
I think I do.
Yeah, we're looking at it right now.
I actually do have it. I think I have the newest copy.
Does Does it say on the cover a Menippean satire?
Yes.
Yes. I didn't know what that meant.
That's the right one. And then the reason I did that is because I was listening to this critic and writer who's since passed away, but he was on one of these talk shows about writing. And they asked him, he said, well, what are you doing now? He said, well, I've just finished a Menippean satire. I didn't know what that was. Do you know what that was?
I don't know what that is, no.
Okay. Then he started explaining what a Menippean satire was. And I said, my God, that's what I've been doing. So I had to redo it. So I will explain. There's a fun thing about the back of the book and the front of the book. So I'm going to read something to you. On the front of the book, it says a Menippean satire. On the back, it says a Menippean satire does not follow traditional linear form. It utilizes weird locations, odd ramblings, digressions, strange characters moving between styles and points of view. It mixes prose, verse, and drama in the treatment of serious philosophical questions, often incongruous, incomprehensible, unfathomable, and lacking rhyme or reason. Okay. Now, the only bad review I got on Amazon was of this guy that I'm going to read, and he just tore it apart, right? And here it is. Here's what he wrote.
Okay.
About this book, well, what can I say other than the fact that I found it incomprehensible, unfocused, unfathomable, and anything remotely resembling rhyme or reason. John Lasher, music, film producer, composer, conductor, director. So I thought, and I got a hold of him and I said, John, that is the best review. He couldn't believe I was talking. I said, thank you so much. And he I don't know if he ever got it, but he changed, and to this day, every time I have a birthday, he sends a little note saying, Dear Richard, I hope you're well. And because on Amazon, he's not meaning it this way. He's just telling me that this is a piece of crap. That's the Menippean satire, and there you are.
I love it.
That's great.
That's right up my alley. I mean, I feel like a lot of Lynch people that follow Lynch, that this is going to be their type of style of a book. We don't want cookie cutter things. We want abstract and things that don't rhyme to reason. So this makes perfect sense to me.
But I thought some of the stuff I did would be up a Lynch fan, but the stuff I've done doesn't really connect. I don't know quite what the situation is. We share a certain kind of poetic license and all that, but the stuff has never really clicked. The only thing that's clicked are the photographs that I've done of, on the set.
And maybe it's just because it's visual and everybody knows about it. And especially in our social media time, everybody can just throw it up there and you see it and stuff. I think,
but when you read the book, if you get into it, I would be interested from someone who really is into all of that. What about this just doesn't make the mark with the Twin Peaks fans reading this? I don't know.
I think they'd like it. Yeah. I would definitely recommend.
No, it hasn't. I don't.
We could do a book club, and your book will be the first book, right. And we can see
We're going to get some other Twin Peaks fans on the show, and we're going to have a book club, and this is going to be our first book that we read.
Yeah.
That you read. Okay, good.
This will be the first book we all read together.
That's right. We've never read before.
Someone wrote me who's a critic who read the book, and I really liked what he had to say. I mean, it was kind of crazy. He said it took a year to read it. He kept throwing it out the window. No. It was good. It was good. It was okay. But he couldn't resist going out and putting it back on the shelf. I wrote and asked him if I could use that as a preface, and he said yes.
And I love the picture on the front, which I think was from Peru, right?
Yeah.
That's really something. And what I love, I mean, I'm only starting this, but I love the idea of how you do collages and you're trying to get different ideas and how you kind of are making connections. And I think that's a beautiful thing that you do. And I just want to say that. I think that's really interesting how you can take work over years and years, 30 years, and relook at it and reshape it and represent it. It's really a wonderful gift you have.
Thank you. I don't know if it quite works over years, take making it. I mean, the film that I'm working on now, which I'm just about to finish, hopefully, no one believes me, but they keep saying, are you still working on this thing? I don't make story films, like the plot.
Yeah.
Who's going to do who and who killed what, and here comes the good guy and the bad guy. I'm not interested in that. It's a very independent way of what used to be known as independent filmmaking or underground filmmaking, and that usually consisted of like one person with a camera went out and made their film, sometimes two. But you didn't write a script first and then go edit. Go find actors, and you didn't do it that way. It was more like painting would be. You're exploring a subject, but that world is kind of almost, you don't see it much anymore. You can in New York, some places you see films made like that. But there was a point in my life in probably about the middle of the 80s when the video camera got small enough that I felt comfortable to carry it around with me all the time. And it's the same process I did in Mississippi, which is I had this camera sent to me. I found a shoulder bag. I put it in, like a big purse. I put it in there, and I went about my daily thing. When I saw something that interested me, I took it out, wound it up, and shot some film.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And so the process is exactly the same. I had this thing, and I had this little case around my shoulder, and I wouldn't go anywhere during the day without taking the camera.
Uh-huh.
I had tried to get a real movie made a few times, and one in particular, I wrote a script, and it almost happened, and it didn't happen, and I said, okay, this is the end. I'm not getting support here. But I was interested in filming a lot of people in my life in situations that were really interesting to me, but if I didn't have a camera with me on the spot and then come back and say, can we do that conversation again? It wouldn't work that way. I had to get it. I had to be making a journal is what I did. Where some people journal their lives, I was videotaping. Did that every day. I shot and filmed everything in my life. If you were in my life, there it was. If you didn't like it, then you probably ducked out of my life because everything was getting filmed.
It's awesome. I think that's great.
Yeah.
And so you take that after a while and you start saying, well, this might be interesting to mix with that and mix with this and mix with that. Process is everything. Process dictates the result. If you make a painting on a 6x6 feet canvas with a little teeny brush, you're going to have a certain results.
Yeah.
If you have a huge brush and you're painting the side of a wall and it's like a mop, you got another kind of a process. And it'll dictate how it all comes about. And so the process for me with the writing was I had been trying to write for a long time, and it never was successful. I tried it also. I wrote with somebody else. That didn't work. So cut to a few years later when I was sitting, I was in L.A., I remember. I was sitting by a window, and I thought, okay, maybe I can try this idea. And nothing happened. It was just a terrible day, and I was angry, and I was throwing paper around, and I was just disgusted with myself, and I couldn't do it. That evening, I was cleaning some stuff up, and I saw some paper on the floor as I was throwing it away, and I read it for a moment, and I thought, wow, this is the best thing I've ever written. And all it was there was a point during the day when I was so pissed off that I almost used the pen as a dagger, and I was scratching on the paper saying, God damn it, no. I just went through this regurgitation of my feelings and threw it away like it was nothing. But when I looked at it later, I said, finally, you got something. And then I realized that the only thing I was interested in writing was about my observations in my life. That's how that whole thing started. So I started writing about dreams, thoughts. I decided if I wanted to start a story and it didn't go more than a page, and that's it. Forget about it. That's all at once. I was amazed by overheard conversation in restaurants.
Who is it?
Those are the best. Those are the best.
You're thinking, my God, what those people are saying, and not just the content, but the way they're putting words together and hemming, hawing, and I said, that's really great. And I knew I would try to write it down, but that wasn't fast enough, so I started carrying a little tape recorder with me all the time.
That's awesome.
that I could turn on and off in my pocket. And the microphone was actually under my watch on my sleeve.
Like a spy.
But I would get all these from friends and everybody, people I didn't know, or I would just get these. I just wanted the words. I wanted the conversations, and then I would type those up later. And then I started finding that dream I had written down like 4 years ago dovetails perfectly with this conversation I overheard the other day. There was something that brought them together. It might have been the subject matter. Something would strike that this could go from one to the other, because now we're getting back to what you said about the book, how the different things go together.
Yeah.
So it was like putting together this puzzle, and then so finally that's how the book finally came. I just had years of these ideas and thoughts, and I started sticking them together, and then they would sometimes I'd find two pieces I liked, but it suggested a bridge to bring together, and that's basically how it all went together.
I feel like you and David Lynch must get along really well, because in some ways you seem similar in that you have these ideas. Like, I mean, we had talked to John Neff, who he worked with a long time with music, and he would tell us how David Lynch would have a shoebox of just poems, and he would just finally pick one out and say, "Read this, and we're going to create some song," or something like that. But in some ways, it seems very similar in how you guys come up with ideas. Or do you find that? Do you see yourself similar in your artistic styles to David?
We never talked about it.
Really? Wow. Really? Because I'm hearing you, and it's like, boy, that sounds just like David. He would write some things down, notes and things, and he would just shoot things. And especially when I think about DavidLynch.com, he used to have a website. He would do experimental things, and he would just go out there and film stuff and then just share it. Or then he would take it and later on use it in Mulholland Drive and stuff. So I don't know. It's funny. I'm hearing you, and I'm thinking, wow, this sounds like how David Lynch thinks and does his own. I'm amazed. I would just assume, especially because you. So that was my next thing I was going to go into is It's a Beautiful World, where you did 10 days with him in India. Can you share what that whole experience was like?
Have you seen that?
I unfortunately have not.
Lester, it's a beautiful world.
The nice thing about it is David Lynch not directing.
Do you have any movies thinking about ideas?
Well, I have a kind of a distant desire to do, like Inland Empire and Mulholland Drive were two of a certain world. I have a desire to do a third in that same world.
Okay.
But I don't want to think about it now.
No, I won't let you think about it. No.
As you may know, the whole thing that David was doing was going there to see this journey that Maharishi took from high in the Himalayas to all the way to the bottom of India. He wanted to go the same journey so he'd get an idea, because David was going to make a film of the life and times of Maharishi.
I'm going to make a film on Maharishi now, and we're going to start this film with a trip to India in early December. And we're going to go to many, many places where Maharishi and his teacher Gurudev went and taught, and it should be quite an experience. And I won't know what that is till it's finished.
But that so far hasn't happened.
How did you get involved with it? How did you and David go off to India?
Once in a while, I'd see David when he came to town here in Fairfield, where I am. There were just moments at a restaurant. Hello, how are you? Good to see you. I made a film on Maharishi's, basically was his funeral. I say that because the Indians do not do one day and, you drive in black cars and with black veils. That's not it. It lasted for 10 days. It was in 3 parts of India. It was quite a celebration, and I went there and filmed a great deal of that and put it together.
The idea of David Lynch cruising through this ancient culture was a filming opportunity I did not want to miss.
David heard about that and wanted to see it, and he did, and he liked it very much. And then about, I don't know, it wasn't long after that, maybe a year later, I heard that he was going to go to India to start this film. So I wrote him a note and said, look, I don't know if you probably already have someone else going along to film you filming. I said, if not, I'd love to go. And he said, Buster, come on, let's go.
First started Eraserhead. When I started, I had a film I wanted to make, all the equipment I could dream of, a place to work, the stables of a 55-room mansion. It was a mini soundstage, a mini stage, you know. And I thought I should be the happiest person in the world, but when I looked inside, there was no deep happiness.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I thought, man, I gotta do that thing. I gotta find that thing where they said true happiness is not out there. True happiness lies within.
Right.
And so, look at these goats crossing. Guys sleeping. That really pushed me to, you know, find a meditation to go within.
I always wonder for something like documenting, how is it the editing process for you? Because you must have, you know, hours and hours of footage, and then you have to look at it and say, how do I put this film together into a relatively maybe couple hours?
The piece I'm making now, I have footage from, I started this film in 1994. I've got footage from years that I've been putting together and taking out and putting this in and taking this out. So, but in the case of David's film in India, when you're shooting something, you remember the shots. I mean, you remember, oh, there was that part there. And also, I had a built-in script, which was, we got in a helicopter in Delhi, and we went to the first place high in the Himalayas, and we started working our way south. So I saw no reason to throw that out and change it all around, because everything just sort of worked perfectly that way. So that was my so-called script. It was just in my head, but that was what I was thinking when I was editing.
It was here, at this seaside temple, that Maharishi said the inspiration first came to teach this effortless meditation technique. So David propped himself up against a nice, comfortable piece of granite, and along with Bobby closed his eyes for a little meditation, fulfilling a desire he had to meditate in the same place where Maharishi had meditated some 50 years before. David is often asked about the source of his artistic creativity, to which he replies,
If you're a human being, transcendental meditation will take you easily and effortlessly within to the deepest level of life, eternal level, unbounded consciousness, and when you truly experience that, unbounded intelligence is there, unbounded creativity, unbounded love, unbounded energy, unbounded peace, and unbounded happiness. And life gets better and better and better and better and better and better. And
Twin Peaks returned, and David asked you to document some of it. Can you share with us how that came about?
No. Great talking to you guys. Thank you very much. What do you want to know?
How long did you document for?
I think it was a couple of weeks.
One of the things I love about your style, at least some of the documentaries I've seen you do, is that you're kind of actively present in the documentaries, which I think is a beautiful thing, is that it's not a passive thing, that you're talking to crew members and you're talking to other people, other subjects. I think that's a beautiful style to do that. I feel like I'm part of the crew.
Very more intimate and very light.
Yeah.
It's very playful.
Pardon me. Which way to the Twin Peaks Sheriff's Office movie set?
North. North.
It's what my own film is about, too. I cut right in the middle of a scene and you hear us talking about it and why it's not working or something. I mean, you didn't think about it, but now that you're asking me, it just seemed to be, those were the interesting things to me.
Yes.
It had to be integrated. It can't be just one long close-up on David Lynch. I wanted to film everything that I saw, and then I'd figure it out later where it might go. Yeah, I wanted to see the process. So there are a couple scenes in it, sections where you actually see it starts from nothing and becomes a set and actors and cameras.
I love seeing them building the set, and then I imagine that everything is somewhat near each other. Is it all in one warehouse?
Yeah, it looked like one big room.
Yeah, it was all in one place, yeah.
Yeah. It was wild. Yeah, you did a fantastic... I mean, those two documentaries were one of my favorites. And I think it's because you feel like you're in it. Because you're talking to people. You're part of the crew. You felt like it's a POV of a crew member almost.
Right. Well, it was.
Yeah. And I liked your shot where the camera is being brought up with the curtain. So it's like looking down. Did you attach the camera to a rope and you just pulled it up there? Like, what did you do?
They had a crane.
Oh,
That's how those guys got up there. You see one guy, big rope, and he's pulling up, right?
Yeah.
The guys were going up and down, and I said, "My God, I want to see what it looks like from up there." He said, "Well, jump on." So they, one of those cranes and were up in the air.
So you're going to take that end and retie it over here?
Correct.
Okay, got it. But in the meantime, I'm going to be able to see into that room, which is exactly what I wanted.
Very quiet, everybody. Roll sound.
Rolling.
It's like you had a lot of fun making these documentaries.
Well, yeah. I mean, the whole thing is it's fun for me, and those are the things that I'm actually seeing. I mean, I'm seeing a guy walk towards me with a mop cleaning that famous floor.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, I could just film the floor, but I mean, I think this is more interesting. But I don't think about it too much at all. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, And
I didn't know if once you had the footage, you could start editing and playing with the footage anytime you wanted.
I could, because when I filmed, it was one of the last weeks of the whole shoot.
Oh.
So I had to get going, and I didn't get going too soon, and I kept putting it off, again, trying to finish my own film. Then I had to kind of boogie at one point and just put everything down and go. And I was kind of amazed myself of how easily it kind of flowed together.
Yeah.
Because I had a lot of footage, and I also had to learn to program at the same time, which I had to go 4K, and I had to go to Premiere Pro. I mean, I knew I had a lot of good stuff because I'd watched it.
You're not only a filmmaker, you're also an actor, and you acted in Twin Peaks. So I wondered, I'm guessing you acted first, and then, weeks, months later, that you then did the documentary?
Yeah, that's what happened. Yeah, I was there. I mean, it only took me, I only shot for 2 days as an actor. And then I, put my real clothes back on. And,
and what was it like working with David Lynch again? I mean, it was probably 25 years since you had actually done that.
It wasn't easy, and that's not because of David. It was because of me. As an actor, I wanted to find this person again, and I put it to sleep a long time ago, and I didn't have that much, like a lot of actors didn't. I mean, you had to hit the nail on the head immediately. There was no warming up. So that was a concern of mine. I don't know if other actors feel like this, but when you get on a set with a crew of, how many people? I don't know, 60 people on that crew, one or another? You're in front of a lot of people who know each other very well, have their own language at this point. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And someone says action to you, and you're really not that comfortable with the crew and your situation with the crew. And the crew's important. I mean, at least it is for me. Some people, I suppose, can just block that out and go for it. But mainly I didn't. I would finish a scene and think, no, that's just not Ben. That's just, I don't know what I'm doing here. This doesn't feel right. And then he would say, no, it's good. Just go to the next one. So he goes. So I said, okay, all right, what can you do? If he likes it, he likes it. But I wasn't completely living it yet. Whereas in the original, I finally started feeling really good. Whatever lines were given to me, I just had a feeling of how it would all go. So
the part to me that felt very much like Ben, and I thought was my favorite scene of yours was when you're talking about your father giving you a bike, and I thought that a beautiful scene.
I remember writing. My father got me this old Schwinn, secondhand. He painted it green, got a new seat for it. Two-tone green, kind of a lime green and a deep forest green. Fat tires. Oh, it was so hard to ride, but I loved that bike. I love that bike. I'd ride with my friends. Call the hospital. I want you to arrange to pay for all of Miriam, I don't even remember her last name, but they'll know who she is. All of Miriam's medical expenses.
That was a good scene.
It was such a beautiful scene, and I rewatched it today, and it's like, you know what? He seems like he's really trying to say there was better times. You know, we didn't have this whole terrible violence and stuff. And I don't know. I just love that scene. I think you did an incredible job with that scene.
Oh, thank you very much.
Briefly, I'd love to just talk about 1991 or 90. Back in the day, acting. You could have been the killer. No, you were on the script, Ben as the killer. You actually did the scene of killing Maddie, and I just wondered, as an actor, what was that like for you? Where you knew you weren't really going to be playing that part. It wasn't really going to be on TV, but you had to go and act it anyways.
Well, I was pleased because I knew the killer wasn't going to be in the show much longer. As it turns out, that wasn't the case. I mean, I should have remembered this is David Lynch, and if he wants to have the killer be alive, then that's the way it's going to be.
That's true.
Yeah.
As far as that's concerned, I knew about it, and so did Ray. I think it was David called us into a room before. He said, "I'm going to talk to you," and he said, "We made a decision, and you're going to do this and you're going to do that, but we don't want anyone to know, so we're going to play it like you're the killer, Richard, or whatever the scene was, and we're going to do the scene, and then we're going to do a scene with Ray," and it was a third. How was the third one there?
It would be Bob, so it would be Frank Silva.
Yeah. Okay. So I was first, which was kind of fun because that sort of set the blocking of the scene, wherever that footage is. If you could get it, it's worth $1 million to you guys.
That would be great.
I really just want to know how you portray a killer. You played in X-Files, and you played, evil characters to some degree.
Ben Horne's not evil, though. I can't see Ben Horne being evil.
I'm sure you did an amazing job and how you portrayed the character.
I don't know. I don't find it difficult being evil.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, guys?
Yeah.
Are you hearing me?
I'm hearing you.
It's not. It's fun doing all of that.
Yeah. I thought you were the killer.
That's right. So Bryon is actually new to Twin Peaks. Only maybe 2 years ago, I introduced him to Twin Peaks, and that's how we've gotten started here. And so we were watching we'd only watch one episode a week.
Yeah,
and we would talk about it. And for the longest time, he thought Ben Horne was the killer.
I thought Ben Horne was the killer.
Yes.
Seems right, doesn't it?
So recently I was talking to Brad Dukes, and he says hi, and he wanted me to ask you what's going on with the Rudy Wilson film, which is Richard Beymer Before the Big Bang. And I think you had a West Coast premiere.
Well, that's what I keep telling you about. This work I'm working on.
I knew it was. I kept on waiting. Let's wait till the end, and we'll get to this movie.
So what was the question about that now?
Where are we at with it?
I thought I had finished it last year when Greg asked me to play it in the Seattle Museum. I took a look at it, although I wasn't there. At the same time, I looked at it and I said, no, this is not right. This is not right. And I could go into a lot of blah. Once you see it, then I can tell you why. The short version is this: Rudy Wilson and I started this film. It's about two guys trying to make a film. And the funny part about it is that we don't know how to make a film, and we're all fucked up about it. But that isn't a written script. This is just us having a good time together. And sometimes we say, we don't know what we're doing here.
I saw the trailer, and it was like really fast motion and reverse, and it looked like it was younger him and older him, and it was all over the place. And I was like, ooh, this looks really interesting. I'd like to see this.
Well, the thing is, it's shot over a real 24 years.
Wow.
You see us both different.
Yeah.
I mean, it's beautiful that way. My original idea was to take this film that we couldn't make. We were going to make a real film beginning and end. Then he went off, this woman, and I wrote a book and blah, blah, blah. We didn't. So I came back and I saw some footage one day and I said, Rudy, I got an idea. Again, I was in my mode of filming everything with my camera daily. So when Rudy and I would sit and have our writer conversations about the script and write notes down and dialogue down, I always had a camera there filming us. Got it?
Nice.
So I have all of that footage, and I said, Rudy, I got all this footage. We can make a film about two guys trying to write a film, and that'll be more interesting.
Yeah.
And also, what I want to do is, I wanted to pick about 8 or 9 scenes that have a progression about them from the original script that we were writing. And I said what we can do is we can film these with actors, but then when you and I are talking about a scene, we can actually go to it.
Wow.
And we can intercut us talking about the scene. Right in the middle of the scene, the actors will be saying something, and you'll hear us saying it, and you'll geese back to us in this room or wherever we are talking about the scene and back and forth. And I'm doing something right now in this case to finish a certain sequence up. So you're going back and forth between two guys. You're seeing the process and the film at the same time.
That's cool.
I love it. That sounds awesome.
And throw a little something else that's kind of fun because it kind of relates to David Lynch's Mulholland Drive. I don't know if his was real or not. Mine was. Hathaway, who was a film, one of the actors who plays this he's a punk drummer. He was really fantastic. At a certain point, halfway through the film, he said, "Man, I got to go on tour. I can't do anymore." And I said, "Oh my God, I got more to shoot. What am I going to do?" And finally, I won't tell you how I came to the conclusion, but anyway, I had to have somebody else play that part. So right in the middle of the film, I was trying to figure out a way to explain to the audience why I've got a new actor all of a sudden. Now, David Lynch, I think, did that by not explaining it.
Yeah, right.
So he already used that one up. But something happened in one of my rehearsals with the new guy, which I won't explain because it's really fun. You see the making of the process of this film, and you see a lot of mistakes, and you see cameras that don't work. Let's do it again, and we'll make it work this time. So this thing works in the film quite well now, and I really love the fun of this film, and it's delightfully all over the place.
That's awesome.
So,
we can't wait to see it. I know.
Damn it, you'll be the first.
Brad Dukes and us, we're all going to be the first wherever you show it. We'll have to come and see it.
I'll send it to you. You'll review it.
That'll be awesome.
We'll have you back on.
Not the New York Times, but you.
That works.
That'd be cool.
So I think we're just about done, but I'd love to say, so what is it about documenting that you enjoy so much? I mean, you've been doing it for a whole life, pretty much here.
What I like about it is the spontaneity of it, I guess, not knowing quite where you're going next. And in this film, even when I'm filming the actors doing their scenes, there's some times when I don't even know what's going to happen next. We just have an idea, and I'm going to film it however I feel to do, as if it's a real situation. And I really don't care for the whole process of making movies. You know, take one, put a camera up, and there's a dolly track, and you bring in the people, and the actor goes away, and then they bring the actor back, and then you do take one, and you take two, you take three. Okay, we're doing the same thing with a close-up now. It's like, no.
Right.
There's a more fun way to do this. It moves way too slow for me or interesting to me.
Well, it works for you. The style you've done works for you. I do like what I've seen. I love you're part of a lot of the documentaries you've done, and I think that's really special. Thank you so much.
Wait, what documentaries have you seen?
Well, what have I seen? We've seen
the Twin Peaks ones.
We saw the Twin Peaks one, but what else did I see? There was something where there was a lady at a gate and she opened a door. Is this yours?
My goodness, that was my friend. Yeah, I played that. Yeah, I did that for her memorial. Yeah.
Hello? Is anyone there? Where are you? You're in the what? Well, I need help. I needed a nice entrance like that. Ooh, the greens, the blues, and the reds. Oh, you're gonna like this.
It was special, and I felt like I was being part of that.
That's very sweet. Yeah, it was a nice little moment. That was in India, of course, and she was there, and I knew that the door was locked, and I knew that if I knocked on it long enough, and I just had a feeling, hopefully she'll answer the door, and there she'll be.
It's funny because I was like, did he plan this? Did he plan to say, okay, I'm going to knock on the door a couple times, and then you come in, open it?
She didn't know I was knocking on the door. I mean, I just went to visit him that day, and I walked in, and I saw that red door, and I knew that they were behind it, because it was like an open, it wasn't a room exactly, but it was an open courtyard that opened onto.
Yeah.
I knew if I knocked on it long enough, she or Michael, her husband, would answer the door. Unfortunately, Michael wasn't there, so she answered the door.
That's really something. It would be great to have Vimeo or other ways where our audience could actually purchase your work, because I think you really
I'm hoping when I get done with this film that, I will have a website, and these things, will just link you to Vimeo or wherever.
Yeah,
that'd be cool.
I think that'd be wonderful.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people would love to check those out.
Yeah, it's such an interesting career and everything you've done.
And that's only a small piece.
I know. We could talk to you forever.
I mean, I think you do sculpture, you do other types of work. You're very fascinating. I think that we could talk forever with you about your work. But thank you, Richard, so much for your time. It really is an honor to get to talk to you. And I can't wait.
My pleasure. I'm glad we finally got this together.
And thank you, Richard Beymer, for your generous time today. Just being on the phone with him for over an hour.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It was just so cool. Hope everybody enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed talking to him. And just hearing his voice when we first called him saying hello, it was like, oh my God, we're on the phone with Ben Horne.
Yes. I want to rent a room at the Great Northern.
I wanted to be like, so you got a room available? It was really cool.
Oh, it's so cool. It's a nice guy and really so interesting. And I really, really want to see his work. I hope he makes it available. His
Vimeo.
Yeah.
The documentary we did talk about the Summer of Freedom, it is on YouTube. It's worth a watch.
Yeah.
But if we could get it so we can support Richard Beymer.
And I think it's something that should be shown in every school. I mean, like,
it's part of history. He was part of history. And he's just so humble about it. Like, I did this.
Right.
Because he felt like it was the right thing to do. The fact that he did document a lot of this stuff is really cool, and I'm glad it's so cool that PBS used it. And
when they did their documentary, they used a lot of his footage for it.
Yeah, and this is stuff you learned in a history class, but at the same time, not in depth like that. You're hearing it from someone who was there.
Right. It's crazy
really
for
cool.
somebody like me that it was like 10 years before I was born or so. In some ways it's like we've come so far, and yet some ways we still have so much farther to go. I mean, it's
very
crazy.
true. It's very true. But to think that was happening 10 years before you were born.
Yeah.
Blows my mind.
It really, right.
Yeah.
That's putting it in perspective, really, to see that, like, what's going on. And
yeah, it's like 12, 13 years from when I was born.
Yeah.
We owe it to people like Richard Beymer and all those folks that did that. Hopefully everybody enjoyed today's show. And if you did, you can find us on social media. You can like us on Facebook at Twin Peaks Unwrapped. Ben's always on Twitter at Twin Peaks Unwrapped.
And Bryan's always on Facebook at Twin Peaks Unwrapped.
Yeah, we're always getting likes, so getting some feedback. And you can send us an email at twinpeaksunwrapped@gmail.com. Thank you, Jamie, for your email about the episode with JC. We didn't write you back, but we do appreciate the email.
Yeah, we'll get there.
We'll get to you, but we appreciate you always writing to us. I just want to say that out loud. That is today's show. We'll be back next week.
You photographed down in Mexico, Buster? It's kind of like India, but it isn't a Mexican India.
They're similar.
Similar, yeah.
The food and I in Mexico do not have a good working relationship. India's way easier for me.
Really?
Oh, and I'm the opposite.
Yeah.
Oh, I got so sick in India.
I had bad milk in Dehradun.
It's the title of your memoir, I understand.
It's a great title. Yeah.